You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Shawn Wilkie, and along with my awesome co host, we interview the innovators every week. Ivan, please go ahead and get us started.
Hey, I'm Ivan Zach, and I'm extremely excited to have this guest today on our podcast because, as I said before the recording, we were waiting for 200 plus episodes to be fully ready for having Dr. Rob Trimble here. And I don't know how the hell we didn't have you here before, but I am very excited. You're one of the iconic people in the industry and entrepreneurship and everything related to veterinary startups, business, and education in it. Dr. Rob Trimble is a future focused veterinarian and entrepreneur dedicated to innovation at the intersection of medicine, technology, and organizational design. Since graduating from University of Illinois College of Veterinary Medicine in 2013, he has been a private practitioner, a house call veterinarian, a startup co-founder at Fuzzy Pet Health, and a nonprofit executive director at the Veterinary Entrepreneurship Academy. Dr. Trimble is the VP at Harbor.vet, an online experiential learning platform that provides veterinary students with access to community learning and growth through opportunities like externships, leadership, training, and more. Rob, welcome to the show. Thank you for finding the time.
Ivan, thank you so much for having me. Shawn, good to talk with you again. And seriously, to hear you say what you said in the intro there is a deep honor. So thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate being here.
So, Rob, you've been through so many cool things, and I know that Harbor Vet is a part of Suveto, which is a larger organization. It has different divisions to it. Can you give us just the backdrop of what it is and what are you leading in it?
Yeah, happy to. Yeah, Suveto stands for Supporting Veterinary Ownership. It's kind of a funny name. I had a hard time remembering it when I first learned about it too. But once I understood what it stood for, then it made a whole lot of sense. Supporting veterinary ownership. And it's really one of the reasons that attracted me to this company. It's the reason why I'm doing what I am today at Harbor.vet, which is one of the three branches of this company. Suveto actually started out initially as a finance company by the name of Calico Financial. That was a company designed to help independent veterinarians get access to capital to start their own practices. You know, if you were didn't fit within the perfect box of the ideal customer for one of the big banks, which is where a lot of veterinarians would typically go to find funding for their practices, Calico Financial offered more flexible financial terms, which is still very successful today and is one thriving branch of Suveto. So I think last year we helped about 60 different practices get started across the nation, which is something we're really proud of. So supporting the independent practice owner is one aspect of our business. Another branch is called Suveto Veterinary Health, and that's actually a network of hospitals that the parent company Suveto owns. So they are the majority owner of these hospitals. We have 66 of those hospitals around the country. And then the third branch is Harbor.vet. It was actually one of the companies that I worked with as part of a program in a previous chapter of my career at the Veterinary Entrepreneurship Academy. Back then, it came to me and it was participating in this program where we matched a student to work at Harbor over the summer. And we went through this entrepreneurship education, learned about the value proposition, who your customer is, how to communicate and just tell a story that resonates with your customer. Thinking about your internal mechanics of your business, your activities, resources, and costs, and who are the people you're going to partner with. Did all that work with them and helping them to define their business model. And actually, that student that we matched to them actually has come back and is now working at Suveto as a doctor. She's about a year and a half out and is actually one of our top producing doctors, Dr. Gabby Vega. So it's been a really neat success story to see the sort of the journey of this education that I love to provide vet students because we're just seeing it start to show up in the real world and the benefit of it. Harbor, like I mentioned, when it came to the VEA, was kind of branded as a LinkedIn for vet med. It was kind of like a place where veterinary students could go and connect with other veterinary professionals from around the country. And to a degree, it still is that today. But what's changed a lot over the last year and a half or so is that it's now more of an experiential learning community where we built these really engaging educational programs that do a couple things. One, they build community, and they also allow students to see themselves grow and develop and improve. We can get into it a little bit later if you want, but those two pieces, being a part of a strong community and seeing yourself grow and develop, are two of the pieces of a previous chapter of my life where I did a deep dive into the science of happiness and positive well-being when I was a fourth year vet student at Illinois. learn that there's two strong contributors. Assuming you have your basic needs met, there's two strong contributors to positive well-being. Might be relevant for a lot of the veterinarians out there, right? So being a part of a strong community, a network of people that support you through your ups and downs, that's a huge piece of what drives long-term happiness. And so is being able to see yourself grow and develop. Any veterinary student listening to this podcast, obviously you got to where you are today because of that drive, and I get it. And so what we do with our programs is kind of lean into two of those two strong drivers of positive well-being, and that shows up in a whole lot of different ways throughout our programming and how we interact with vet students today.
So that's pretty cool. I mean, it's almost like you're following the Maslow's hierarchy, right? From the basic needs met, then you go into the next one, sense of belonging, and then next one, self-actualization. That's actually drives you to actually self-perfection. And I don't remember the exact
Self-actualization.
yeah, but so that's I'm very big proponent of that, and I talk a lot about it when we talk about what the organization should provide, because you can, as an organization, provide that. But kind of going back to Harbor.vet as a component of Suveto, I'm just trying to understand from the business angle. This is a strategic, I think, alignment where that really what you do at Harbor.vet is it true to say that that's becoming sort of like a lead gen for the doctors and future employees at Soveto, or is
Yep.
that is it a part of it strategically?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, no doubt, without a doubt, a big part of what I wake up thinking about every day is how do I get to work with more amazing veterinarians like the Gabby Vegas of the world, right? How do I turn more students on to this idea of having an impact, not just as a doctor, as a medically trained doctor, but as a business trained professional as well? How to show up as a leader, how to solve problems, how to think strategically. So, yeah, there's an element that's just personal, like I want to be around more of those people. And it's really exciting to bring them on and work with them. But strategically at a parent company level, yeah, of course, by building this ecosystem and this sort of really positive space where veterinary students can come and learn and grow and develop together. Yeah, we're building an attractive community that is ultimately pulling students into our Soveto ecosystem. Sure.
That's so cool, Rob. So let me just kind of back up and take another stab at this, because it's really interesting, and I don't think we've ever had a conversation with anybody that's doing something quite like what Suveto seems to be doing here. So we've got three branches. We've got the private practice kind of financing division, almost like private banking.
Right.
We've got Suveto, who owns a bunch of corporate hospitals, and then we've got Harbor.vet. Now, does Harbor.vet service both of those groups, the people that get the financing from Suveto and also the Suveto kind of ecosystem at large?
I would say yes, broadly. For example, last year we had several of our Calico clients who still own their practices who participated in one of our summer externship programs called SHIP, the Student Hospital Immersion Program. It's a 10-week long program where we match veterinary students to veterinary practices, like where they're going to work at after school. And we take them through this 10-week long curriculum on the fundamentals of business, how to step into leadership, culture, what does teaming look like in a modern veterinary practice. Before we hopped on this call, we were talking about what the conversation I just had with the students last week on the macro trends in the profession as well. So the fun part about it for these practices, to answer your question, Shawn, yes, they get to participate broadly across both of those two groups. But not only do they have a student who's working in their clinic 40 hours a week, full time over the summer, but they also have a student who's interested in business, interested in entrepreneurship, interested in having an impact, and they're going through this training on the fundamentals of business and how to have that impact. So it really creates this dynamic environment in the practice for that 10 weeks over the summer that drives a lot of innovation at the ground level too. So a lot of those practice owners really appreciate that.
Super duper cool. So we've got over 100 practices that you're able to have somewhat of an impact on when it comes to the future of what it looks like to work in a veterinary clinic. So I guess the question I have for you is, being at this vantage point, kind of running this division of a really cool organization, what do you think the future of work in the veterinary field looks like?
Boy, appropriately timed question. Like I said, we were just talking about this last week with some of the veterinary students in the SHIP program. You guys have probably had someone recommend this book on a previous podcast episode, but The Future of the Professions. by the Susskins. That's one of my favorite books. Talks about the changing role of the professional in the future, not just the veterinarian, but professionals of all types, right? Accountants, lawyers, clergy, professionals. What's the role of the veterinarian in a future where we have artificial intelligence, where technology is evolving faster than what we are as biological entities? Right? Our role as a veterinarian, as a professional, changes, and it's happening at a macro level across a lot of different professions. Right? You're seeing the professions go from where their role is serving as kind of a conduit to access that information for the average general layperson, to now they're, with now that we have access to the world's information in our pockets, right? Now the professional, the veterinarian, is no longer necessarily the conduit through which people can access that information, but how they make sense of it, right? So sense making becomes really, really important for the role of a veterinarian in the future. You can imagine a future where the pet owner has a lot of different data streams that are coming in about their pet. Their pet maybe has a wearable. Maybe they just took a little patient side diagnostic test to check for worms at home for their annual health check, right? Now they've got all these different data streams that are coming in. Who's keeping sense? Who's making sense of all that? Who's aggregating it? Who's helping serve as a guide or a coach for that client? Right? We know that young people, millennials, and combined with Gen X, they account for over 41% of the pet owning population and growing, right? And what have we learned recently? Just talked with Pete Scott about a week ago. He was with the American Pet Products Association. He was talking about the bond that this young customer wants with their veterinarian. I initially thought maybe they're just going to be kind of dispersing that bond over multiple different types of veterinarians, right? You've got a way to access wellness centers, like walk-in wellness centers on the weekend where you can get your vaccine with no wait, right? You've also got telemedicine. You also got a house call service. You got emergency, specialty, and regular GP, right? You have all these different ways through which veterinary. I was thinking maybe the average customer today is thinking I can spread my relationship with my veterinarian over all of these people. But actually, what we found out is the opposite. I learned it was the opposite. They want more of a deeper relationship with that sort of headquarter, that quarterback vet, right? So I think that's really interesting as I think about what is the changing role of the general practice veterinarian in the future. I think that's in line with where we're going.
That's really cool. It's these are deep, deep topics, and it's interesting as you were talking about the access to information and even analytical ability of things like Chat GPT. We just had an episode on that you could actually get to the answers of what's going on, not necessarily relying on your vet. You want someone with the authority to confirm it. There's also will be, I assume, the reliance on this service of it. So there needs to be someone who then they rely and confirm, but people will be much more educated. You can't anymore just brush it off and say, oh, you use Google Doctor anymore. You can use Chat GPT Doctor now, which is far more reliable. So you better be the same answer to the questions that they have, and people will compare. So it's very interesting. I think that we'll be constantly challenged with our knowledge, and which is I think it might be healthy, but then the services is still something that we'll be delivering. But with that, so in your line of work where you're educating and creating this entrepreneurial sort of environment, can you tell us a little bit, and for the listeners and the students that are out there, what this externship looks like? What is this? What are the courses that you teach? What's the length? Is it the summer camp thing? Is it remote? Is it on site? Like,
Yeah,
just give us a little bit of a color for your ideal sort of customer, if you will,
sure.
and what is happening throughout the engagement with the Harbor.vet.
Well, maybe another way of answering that question is just to describe the sort of journey that we're trying to take vet students on from maybe their first year of veterinary school all the way through post-graduation. That really describes, I think, what you're looking for there. I remember being a first-year vet student, looking around and not seeing anybody, right? And it was pretty intimidating. I imagine a lot of, if there's any vet students listening to this, and actually I imagine a lot of entrepreneurs still feel this, a sense of imposter syndrome, right? That you may have felt being around some of these really smart people. Didn't have much of a community, right? And so one of the first things that we have built into Harbor and some of our educational programmings is a program that happens over the school year, monthly. A way to build relationships with like-minded peers is the goal of this program. It's called the Harbor Business Experience. Basically, it's a series of monthly meetups on campus led by we call them Harbor student envoys, It's kind of like a student ambassador. But our envoys are really there to build community at the local level. So our envoys facilitate these conversations at the local level. We give them a handful of prompts that guides the discussion, but they're really there to facilitate a conversation and engagement amongst their peers of like-minded friends who have an interest in business or entrepreneurship or practice ownership, or simply learning about how they can be a better leader within their practice once they graduate. So any vet student can join that from first year through fourth year all over the world. We even have a group for colleges that don't have an envoy on site, where we can have more of a virtual meetup and discussion. So any student all over the world can participate in this class. It happens monthly from October through April. And then, so that's the way we build community as well as help the students grow and evolve over the summer. We got a couple different pieces of educational content we give the students every single month, highlighting one of our business fundamentals and how we see it show up in the real world. We also have a guest speaker series where we interview professionals from around the veterinary space and beyond to talk about how they see that fundamental showing up in the real world. Finally, like we said, we have our envoys facilitating those discussions to collectively define how they experience that business fundamental showing up in their real world experience of veterinary medicine. So it's a matter of synthesizing not just didactic information, but experiential real world perspectives, right? So that's happening throughout the school year. And then in the summertime, we have another fun program called SHIP. That's our 10-week externship program. It stands for the Student Hospital Immersion Program, 10 weeks long. We take the students through, again, a similar curriculum on these business fundamentals. If anybody wants to look this curriculum up or more of the framework, it's through one of the frameworks we use is called the Business Model Canvas, originally created by a group called Strategizer. But anyway, it goes through the business model fundamentals. And then also at the end of that SHIP program, we take the students to a concluding event where they get to get up and share a presentation about the work that they've accomplished over the summer. Oh, and one other thing I did mention, before these students are ever matched to a practice, I and some of the team on Harbor connect with these practice leaders and we say, what's a problem that you may have been experiencing in your real world, but you just haven't had the time to sink your teeth into? Or maybe there's an opportunity that you've recognized. Maybe there's a new partnership opportunity that has come into town and you've been too busy and you haven't been able to tackle it. Let's put a student on that. Let's put the creativity and the energy and the excitement and curiosity of a student on that problem and see what we can accomplish in 10 weeks. Right? So it's really serving as kind of an accelerator, not just for entrepreneurship and innovative thinking, but broadly, back to your question, Ivan, about how does this benefit within Suveto? I think it also strongly contributes to ownership in the future, pursuing ownership in whatever way makes the most sense. Because ownership of today isn't like the ownership of previous years. My uncle was a veterinarian and a practice owner. He came and serviced the dairy farm that I grew up on. I saw private practice ownership as it historically has been. But ownership is changing in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different ways to show up as an owner, a lot of different ways to benefit as an owner, whether you're talking financially or whether you're talking about the professional growth and development that comes through that experience.
Rob, that's fascinating. And I'm like thinking to myself, is this just an incredibly sophisticated funnel to like make sure that Suveto never runs out of veterinarians? Or are you placing students in other veterinary practices besides the 100 or so that are represented in the group?
Good question. For right now, we're just placing them within the practices within our group, or I've had a couple students do this. They've come up to me and said, hey, my dad owns a private practice. And I love what you guys are building. Can I participate in this as a with a private practice? We say, yeah, come on, let's do that. Because again, we're trying to support and encourage ownership. That's what our name is all about, supporting veterinary ownership. So it only makes sense we provide that and open that up for students in that position.
That's fascinating. It seems like just such a great way to like get past that challenge of being able to find veterinarians. So because you're providing them this content and then also potentially a place to go work at.
And not just veterinarians who understand their role and how it's changing in the future. They understand their customer. They understand the value that they're delivering to the customer and how to communicate that value, right? They understand the core elements of the business so that they don't have, look, I think what I'm trying to realize here is something where we train for critical thinking and not compliance, right? If we're having to wait on compliance in the future, it's too slow for the rate of change that we're going to be experiencing. It's too slow to ask and send something up the chain of command and wait for a command to come back down. Imagine if you could have an entire workforce, an entire team filled with creative, competent, critically thinking individuals. One of the TED Talks that I think I'm going to share with you guys in a minute is going to highlight that if anybody's curious to learn more about it.
That is really cool. I mean, we're, at Galaxy, we're looking at the incorporating the curriculum, but the nurturing of the veterinarians and veterinary students. You really, really excelled at this. This is really cool. It's what I think is driving the new generation of veterinarians is the existence of the mentorship program is huge, and for the most part, it only is limited to clinical. There's no good business, and not a business in the way, hey, read your P&L and understand how to make your inventory, more match the 20% industry standard, but the critical thinking, the understanding of value delivery in the exam room, and all of those. This is super cool. Huge compliments to what you're doing.
Appreciate it. Can I tell you one more thing about it?
Absolutely.
So I've told you about the journey we've taken these students on so far through school, first through fourth year with the Harbor Business Experience, any summer experience with SHIP, second and third years primarily who we attract to that. We've also launched recently a SHIP Light program. 10 weeks can be a lot for a student to fit in their schedule. So if they have a 2-week block or a 3-week block, anywhere from 2 to 8 weeks that they want to try and fill anytime all over the year, not just during the summer, they can do that through that SHIP Light program. And then finally, the last leg in the journey of the veterinary student educational sort of path that we've been taking them on is the Harbor Go program. Go, it stands for Graduation to Ownership. So these are students that we've been regularly working with throughout their school year, whether it's through programs like what we've built or through VBMA talks. We have a whole VBMA lecture series where we go and are close partners with the VBMA. But at the end of it, a lot of students want to take action. They're like, okay, I'm graduating. I want to take on an ownership opportunity in the future, but I want to make sure I'm going to be a good doctor first. I want to practice. We say, great, let's do that. So we hire veterinarians on in this program as Harbor Go, fully paid, fully benefited doctors practicing within a practice, one of our practices at Suveto. And for 10% of their time, we pull them out of their clinical duties and we plug them into effectively a 2-year business fellowship program. Where once every other month, we're introducing a new case study that covers 2 elements that we're trying to improve this new veterinarian on. It's their clinical skills, professionally, how are they clinically performing, as well as their professional skills. How are they helping them learn and grow and develop from a business ownership mindset, from a leadership mindset? Right. So every other month, we introduce a new case study. We send them back into their clinics and say, go experience how it shows up in the real world. We're going to bring you back every single week. We're going to touch on that again. And it's not just me teaching you, student or now veterinarians, about this stuff you're learning. You're going to be teaching each other almost as much as what we're teaching you. Right. So it's again about this idea of building community, building a sense of self-efficacy or confidence in this new veterinarian. And at the end of that 2-year business fellowship training, not only are they going to be confident in their skills, but we are going to be very confident in their skills, be able to want to invest in them, to pursue an ownership opportunity of their own. Right, so if they want to pursue an ownership opportunity like through Calico Financial, we will applaud them and send them on their journey as an independent veterinarian. Right, if they want to pursue a little bit more of a balanced ownership standpoint, where they still have equity in the practice, but not all of the burdens of the responsibilities, there's a shared ownership model that I haven't even talked to you about. It's called VOVETS, or veterinary owned. It's one of the corporate, a little bit more of a corporate model, almost like a franchise model.
That's really
And then,
cool.
yeah,
I
I'll
mean,
stop
that
there.
diversity in the business models on the veterinary side really allows this creativity, but you cater towards different type of the veterinarian, because you see those that like to work in the clinic, so you provide them with the business acumen and understanding behind it, and then those that are more entrepreneurial, you don't lose them from the network. You're just inviting them into ownership, but still co-ownership within the network. That's brilliant. I do regret we only got you here now on this episode, because I would like to learn about it about a year ago. So this is brilliant, but we did run out of time as we usually do. We usually ask 2 questions, and you predicted one of them. So what is the YouTube video, TED Talk, a book, which one of them you recommended? So please repeat that book again before the TED Talk that you wanted to advise, and
Sure.
something that inspired you recently. So
Yeah, the book is The Future of the Professions: How Technology Will Transform the Work of Human Experts. It's by a father and son author, Susskind, Susskind. And then the TED Talk that I would love to every single person who hears this episode to listen to when you want to learn about what leadership in the future looks like, I think this is a great video that highlights that shift. It says, the title is How Great Leaders Serve Others. It's by David Marquet, Marquet.
Okay. We will incorporate that.
That's awesome. And last question for you is, what other guests do you think we should have on the show, another innovator?
I've got one just in mind. Dr. Ainsley Bone, veterinarian and MBA. I've just had the great pleasure to start recently working with her at Harbor. So previously at Purina. So fantastic human, amazing innovator, and someone who's certainly been in the space since the very first Veterinary Innovation Summit, which is, I think, where we met.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinaryinnovationpodcast.com. See you next week.